Okay, good morning, Portsmouth. Welcome to the February 1st Parking, Traffic, and Safety meeting. And could we please have the attendance?
Mary Lou McElwain.
Here.
Steve Pesci.
Here.
Erica Wygonic.
Here.
Mark Siracusa. Fire Chief Bill McQuillan.
Here.
Public Works Director Peter Rice.
Here.
Stephanie Casella, Planning Department. David Allen.
Here.
Chairman Andrew Bagley.
Here. And I still technically have not been appointed to PTS because we forgot to include it in the last meeting packet. So we'll just punt on that for one more month.
Acting chairman.
Yeah, can you be acting chairman?
Well,
Yeah.
I would say Steve Pesci, who's the deputy
Chair.
chairman or assistant chair, would be deferred to. In this,
Because you're not technically.
And I'm happy to defer back to to complete the protocol.
Okay. Well, we have a pretty short agenda, so I think.
So if Mark isn't here, excuse me,
Yep.
Dave votes.
Yes.
Yeah, and he would have voted for you?
Right. And then we also don't have Stephanie.
Do we have a quorum?
Yeah.
And I know the fire chief might have to step out at some point. But we're good. We need 5 for a quorum, so we're
Yeah, right.
we're
So
well
it's-
into the
okay.
quorum. I'm gonna not vote again. We'll just be down a couple votes.
We don't have a lot to do.
But I don't think we have a lot to
Sure.
vote on. So if we could get the financial report. And then we are going to have Director Fletcher give us a report back on holiday parking. But if there's any questions on this part of the financial report, now would be the time to bring it up.
I don't want to talk about this today because we're down a bunch of people, but I have wondered what the history and context is of us reviewing this financial report. Like, what are we tasked with?
That's an excellent question.
Yeah.
I think it's more just, it's a way to get the financial report out into the public so that eyes can be on it, and this
It's
committee
just like
makes
a public-
is a right vehicle
Okay.
to post it monthly.
We vote on it, and I've always kind of wondered, what are we voting on? That we've seen it, that
It's really
we
just an
approve?
acceptance of it and sending it to City
It's-
Council.
Okay.
Because this committee does not, vote on any financials associated
Yeah,
with
so
this.
I've kind of always wondered, what am I speaking to?
I'm just wondering if it's something that could be done quarterly. Just to streamline things, do we need to do it at every meeting? Could we do it every third meeting? Is it
In the midst of budget season, I really enjoy seeing the numbers.
okay?
I would rather keep it monthly. I'm sure.
It's a lengthy process to approve it either.
Yeah. All right, Director Fletcher, the floor is yours for
Great. Good morning,
holiday
everybody.
parking report.
Thanks for inviting me to discuss the holiday report for 23. As you know, Portsmouth has a long history of actively managing downtown on-street and lot inventory by trying to push for a 3-hour turnover with the idea that consistently available parking enhances the public's ability to patronize downtown businesses. In the years past, during the December holiday season, the city's adopted an annual measure intended to encourage residents and visitors to shop and enjoy the city, amounting to free parking on Portsmouth downtown on-street and lot inventory with a 3-hour time limit. The program was popular, but it created unintended gridlock as business owners and employees would simply move their cars every few hours but stay downtown to a different space, and with the result being the opposite of the intended goal of the program. So to alleviate this, in 22, we introduced a modified version of the program, allowing users to continue occupying the same space as long as they started a parking session after the 3rd hour. That did open up some inventory, but it also saw an increase in parking citations for overstays and leading to adverse interactions with enforcement and clerks personnel. So to adjust for this, in 23, we decided to move the program into the garages by simply offering the first 3 hours free, while extending the program from 10 days to the 11th to the 31st from 10 days to 21. The goals were to continue to attract more traffic to the downtown core, to engage local business, to enhance availability of on-street and lot inventory, minimizing on-street and lot citations related to the program, and hopefully minimizing the system-wide adverse fiscal impact of doubling the length of the program plus a day. So I performed two separate analyses. The first studied the change in consumer behavior after the program was deployed. This amounted to comparing daily averages for myriad data points for the period of December 1st through 10th, and then again for the 11th to the 31st. I ran behavioral analyses independently for the Hanover Garage, Foundry Garage, On-Street and Lot, and the system as holistically. The second analysis compared the entire month of December 23 versus 22 for the same inventory groupings, and the following data points are pertinent to that particular assessment. Next tab, please. So again, the goal to attract more traffic to the downtown core to engage local business. The city did enjoy an 18% increase in overall transactions system-wide over 22. The next goal, making on-street and lot inventory more available. OS&L inventory realized a 12% increase in transactions year over year. The third goal, to minimize on-street and lot citations and the related negative impact in public sentiment and feedback associated with previous iterations of the program. We recorded no difference in average citation issuance compared to non-program months. Rather than the typical negative interaction with enforcement personnel, the simplified nature of the adjustment to the garages led people to be delighted at the exits. Those that were not aware of the program were delighted that they got free parking for 3 hours, and those that were aware were not upset about going over because the bill had been reduced dramatically. And interactions with staff were overwhelmingly positive, so that was a very big plus. And finally, to minimize the system-wide adverse impact year over year. The revenue gains we realized in on-street and lot inventory due to the enhanced availability helped offset revenue losses in the city's garages to dramatically reduce the adverse effect year over year to just $21,259, despite more than doubling the program duration from 10 days to 21. This is in comparison to a roughly $100,000 drop last year and closer to 200 plus in the years prior to that, before we started to try and enforce the 3-hour time limit. So all of these data points, they relay a very positive public reaction to the 2023 changes to the holiday program. Not only did behavior change dramatically in the directions desired, we saw no increase in citation issuance for the month of December compared with other months, and therefore no increase in confrontations related to citations. The facilities were simply programmed with a 3-hour grace period, and normal rates accrued after that. So public interaction, very positive, dramatic difference from years past. There's one cautionary note. All the data points are cause to celebrate. It is important to note that system-wide peak demand percentages were increased from 109% last year to 123% in December 2023. So this is indicative of the fact that reducing pricing by offering a 3-hour discount does exacerbate our current supply versus demand dynamic by increasing the already untenable demand by 14%. So I have much more granular data. In the interest of time, this is the year-over-year comparison, just showing some high data points. If anybody wants to see the much more granular data broken down between the garages and on-street and the two different types of analyses, I have that available. I printed several copies, and they're on the printer at DPW. So if anybody wants them, I'm happy to email them to you, because I forgot to bring them here. And I've got one copy, and Eric's got a copy. If anybody wants them, more than welcome to them. Any questions?
Erica?
Can I ask a clarifying question about this last line? It says the year-over-year, the system saw a revenue reduction of 21,000, but then you said last year the reduction was 100,000?
From the year before.
From the year before. So
Well,
this is
from a normal month.
Okay.
A normal
Okay.
travel month. Like
So this is
November versus December. This
So
is
November to December this year, we saw a 21,000 drop, or we saw 121,000 drop?
This year is just December. This number here is just December versus December, so it's apples to apples.
Okay.
The previous was the December versus it's November.
So last year, December was 100K less than November.
Than that November, yeah.
This year, December was 20K less than last December.
That's correct.
So 120K less than last November.
Other way around, no. The last statement's on.
What Eric is asking is the cost. If you take away just this year's particular cost, was it 121,000 or
No,
21,000?
Versus December. There's no point. Last year, there's no point in comparing it to the December before, because there was also that program. So I just compared it to a non-program month. This year, I was able to look at two program months side by side. So it's a different comparison.
What's the difference this year's December and this year's November?
I did not make an assessment to that. I compared it to last December. Two program months, apples to apples.
Okay.
So I think the answer to your question would probably be, that number would be about 121,000. Like the total cost of the program, if we had no program in December, our revenues would probably be over $100,000 more, or would they be about $20,000 more? Would you add, or that's, you'd have to run those numbers.
I'd probably have to run them, yeah.
That's what she's asking.
There's no way to run last year's numbers without a program because we had a program. That's why I used a non-program month in previous
Right.
years to compare.
This number is December 2023 minus December 2022 to see
Correct.
the difference in the cost of the program.
That's total revenues
Total revenues in December.
Yes.
For 2 different years
versus
is
total
20.
revenue. Yes.
Last year, you compared December 2022 to November 2022.
Because it was a non-program month, and it wouldn't have made sense to compare it to the previous December. Because
Right,
they
right,
both
right,
had
right.
the same similar
But
program.
to get the rough cost of the program last year, if we look at December 2022 to November 2022 is about 100K.
Yeah,
And
roughly.
so this year, we roughly doubled it, and it only cost another 20K. So it's like 120K for 2 weeks instead of 100K for 1 week.
120K for 3 weeks.
3 weeks
Instead of 100K for 10 days, roughly speaking. So I think, I mean, the council can take a look at this information, and we have plenty of time before the next season.
Yeah.
But it, based on the report today, unless there's other questions that highlight discrepancies, I would say this was a success and a good move. And maybe we do it for 2 weeks instead of 3 weeks to make it that even 100K, or maybe we keep it at 3 weeks because people really liked it. That'll be a political decision to be made. But I don't think there's a lot of downside other than, to the director's point, that we have we have strain on our parking supply, so anytime we give any of it away, that strain gets worse.
Correct.
Steve?
I just want to say I think this was a great success. It was simpler, easier for people to understand. So thank you to whoever came up with it and the implementers. It was great. Good job.
I'll give the credit to Mike Assad for that one.
And I would say the thing that sticks out to me is the interactions with staff were overwhelmingly positive, and historically the interactions in December have been overwhelmingly negative, much
Very much so.
more so than other months because of the confusion that the programs tend to create.
So the enforcement officers had a lot of positive reply to this. Is that what
They
you're saying?
basically just didn't have any other than a normal month of interaction. The interaction we did accrue was in the garages.
Right.
Because that's where the program was.
Right.
And everybody driving up was, oh my God, this is great.
Yep.
And Merry Christmas and all that.
Right.
Instead of, how dare you, you ruined my day, I shopped and paid all this money, and you've ruined my afternoon, I'm never coming back, and all that other stuff you typically
Good,
hear.
good. I thought it was
Yeah.
positive also
Very cool.
from the start. Great.
Yeah, I mean, I think it sounds successful. I'm curious what the message was. Like, I assume we had our electronic signs saying like,
Yeah, we put message boards
how
out in
did you
3 places.
say, like, 3-hour free parking in garage? Like,
Yep.
could it fit in our message board?
So you can have 2 panels, and Eric,
Okay.
you can help me with this one. He directs us when we try to put more than 2 panels. Eric puts a stop to it. The changing messages sign, the ones you commonly would see in a construction site.
Yeah.
We put those up at Daniel Street, just off the bridge,
Okay.
the Russell Triangle, and over by the Masonic Lot.
Yeah.
It's the typical 3 major
Spots,
inbounds.
yeah.
And it just said Hanover and Foundry Garage, first 3 hours free. Hanover and Foundry Garage, first 3 hours free, back and forth.
Awesome.
And we also did a press release and the normal, regular channels.
I was trying to like parse the words to get them short enough. but-
If you look at the split data between 1 through 10, 11, 21, it was immediate impact on, not only on the garages and transactions, but the number of transactions that occurred before 3 hours were up. So and all that granular data is in here. It's kind of interesting, but it would take, it'll spin your head with all the numbers. So I just kind of like simplified this particular
Sorry.
presentation.
It's okay. I mean, I think it's been good.
ahead.
Has there been do you feel like this has also raised the profile of the garage? Like, are we seeing more use of the garage now in January because people got used to using it in December?
I haven't assessed it. You know, January's 30,000 down from last January. But last January, we only had 1 snow event on the 19th, and it didn't incur a parking ban. We only parked like 83 cars because it was just a quick in and out, and the guys stayed ahead of it. This January, we had 2 major events. You know, both of them were a full day. One of them didn't accrue a parking ban, but it was a full day where they stayed ahead of it, and the other one was a full day plus parking ban. And that has a dramatic impact on rates and revenues. So we'll catch it up. But that's purely weather. So I would assess that, you're talking 30,000, 2 days. That's roughly 2 days worth of parking. So we're pretty much spot on from last year.
All right.
Great.
We'll move on to public comment.
Chairman, I think we forgot to make a motion to accept the report.
Yeah.
So I'd like to make that
Oh,
motion.
okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Director Fletcher. And public comment, there's nobody in the audience. Do we have anybody on Zoom?
We have a participant. I don't know if they.
Yeah, I'm having trouble getting back to that window.
If you're on Zoom and want to speak, just raise your hand. We're having
Yeah, I can't get to the where I
we're having some
see that.
technical difficulties here. If you click the Zoom box on the bottom, does that give it to you?
This one?
Yeah. Maybe we're sharing it somewhere.
Yeah. And then it went away. I did see the word share screen when you were in there, but
Sharing that one.
Let me just go back and see if anyone has their hand raised.
Okay.
And let them talk.
All right, everyone just hold tight. We're
so this window is being shared because I see the outline on it.
Kevin says there's no hands raised.
okay. All right, we'll close the public comment, and if there is somebody on Zoom and we need to reopen it, we could always do that. We have no presentations today. So new business, A, discussion on electric scooters and e-bikes in the city. And I'll hand it over to Mary Lou if you want to kick off.
Well, thank you. Yes, well, I've been concerned about this for a few years as we're seeing more scooters on the sidewalks. Presently, there are two bills in front of the New Hampshire legislature. 1455 and 1533. They were both presented on Tuesday for public hearings with no vote at this point. I did speak to a woman who's involved in sale of electric bicycles and is part of SABRE. That group is opposing 1455, which I've read, and I opposed it also because it groups electric bikes, scooters, unicycles. It groups everything in, and it regulates for all three, which doesn't seem 1445. I said 1455, I think. Yeah. So I've been reading about this, and as I said, my concern is specifically for scooters on the sidewalks. So I passed out the Durham Chapter 055, electronic motorized devices. They refer to, under 55-1 general provisions, all motorized devices. The state wording is personal electric vehicles. So we also, just to start with, we have a difference in verbiage. And I think, I don't know where to start with this except to bring it up as a discussion for what the city might decide for, well, we have regulations for bicycles, we have regulations for mopeds, and we have regulations for, which is kind of silly, we have regulations for use of roller skates, coasters, and skateboards. So it seems to me that we have regulations in place that we need to coordinate with electric scooters, which to me are very different from roller skates or skateboards on the sidewalk. You are not supposed to be riding an electric bicycle on the sidewalk, but presently there is no regulation for scooters. So
Right.
I'm just going to bring this up.
Yeah, we have a
Discussion.
regulation on bicycles, which I don't think is actually in compliance with the state RSA, because the state RSA says no bicycles.
No bicycles.
RSA is no bicycles with wheels larger than, say, like 15 inches in diameter.
Right.
Which would be like the little kid bikes, when they're learning to ride on the sidewalk,
Right. I don't think Portsmouth enforces bicycles on the sidewalk around the schools because kids are riding on the sidewalks where it's safer to ride on the sidewalks. So I don't think that
Erica.
gets enforced.
It's not safer to ride on the sidewalk. I'm just going to say that. Keep going.
Yeah, so we do have probably some issues there with our regulations that aren't in
Yes.
compliance.
Right.
So what I would suggest we could potentially do is refer this to legal with the Durham. Is this Durham?
Yeah.
Or Durham?
Durham.
And, see what they come back with. Do we have anything currently that you're aware of on our RSA or on our ordinances?
Not as far as e-scooters, other than, whatever the state current laws are, the RSAs. And they have so many different definitions of different types of vehicles, too.
That's right.
And it's a really matter of determining what fits what, or if there's a new category that needs to be made. And
Steve?
Just some context on the Durham ordinance, because I was involved in helping put that in place. And that was, just for context, the university in town worked on this ordinance pre-COVID. So it's been in place for a while, and it was done proactively out of concern for e-scooter fleets suddenly appearing in Durham. So i.e. like Bird and Lyft, Lime, and all those things. So we did that with the kind of proactively assuming that would happen, and it never did. But I do believe the ordinance has a lot of good points to it and still stands the test of time in the absence of any RSAs that have been in place regulating these multitude of devices. And to Mary Lou's point, House Bill 1445 is now one of two bills that are attempting to codify devices into state law. I think we can have a separate discussion about critiques of the bill as it stands, but I don't know if that's where you wanted to go. I would just say that the challenge with the devices is, one, the variety of devices, and number two, right now lacking state law, the issue is more of operators' use of the devices. I can say in Durham and UNH, although we did succeed in the fleet issue, and we have succeeded in issues like parking of devices and lighting, and we have not succeeded in general education of people that the devices, regardless of whether they're on sidewalks, in bike lanes, need to follow common sense compliance with traffic flow and rules and stopping for pedestrians. So we still have that issue, and I'm sure Portsmouth will have that issue too. But I do think it's something we need to think about. I've also been one who wants us to rethink the moped regulation in the city, but I'm glad to see we're talking about it. I do think referring it to city legal and awaiting the resolution of the state RSAs that are introduced, whether they go anywhere, whether they're modified, adopted, will really frame a lot of our ability to regulate, control, and may also impact the Durham ordinance as well. Of course, there may be parts of it that are rendered moot by something the state does, but
Right.
glad we're having the conversation.
Right.
Attorney Farini, who usually handles stuff for PTS, also handles keeping an eye on the legislator stuff. So she'll be able to watch these bills
Yep.
concurrently with this. I guess I would defer also to the deputy chief, since if we were to pass one of these, it would probably fall on your team to enforce it. Do you see this as a current issue, or is this more or less something we'd be getting in front of before it's become an issue in the department's opinion?
I wouldn't say it's certainly one of our top issues by any stretch. Sidewalks, operating scooters on sidewalks is less of a concern, or seen less than scooters operating at a relatively high rate of speed down the middle of Congress Street the wrong way, which we've seen. So, with the increase in speed that the variety of these devices can attain, they go fast. And, like Steve said, driver compliance is everybody's goal, is to get people to operate them the right way. But I can't say as that we've had any issues with them being on sidewalks, but I'm sure we all have at times seen them disregard traffic control devices or go the wrong way down a one-way street down the middle of Congress Street. I've seen it myself. So that's what we're seeing more here. And of course, with the increase of these, I think we'll see more of it. So I think it's a good step to at least start the discussions now about it, about if and how we do regulate them.
Good.
Mary?
Yes, Steve's comment about the scooter rentals, I think we should look at that for Portsmouth too, because when we had bicycle rentals, which were successful in some regards, not everyone knew the rules of the road, and there were issues. So I think that I wouldn't favor rentals of scooters in Portsmouth.
I think that problem has kind of resolved itself since all the rental companies have more or less gone bankrupt at this point. I
Well,
think 5 years ago it was
it's not over
new
till it's
up-and-coming
over.
thing, and now all that venture capital money seems to have lost favor with the scooter
We'll see.
department.
Yeah.
But we can, we'll refer to legal, and
Yeah, yeah.
if we have something in place for the future, then
Well, I'm glad that we're getting this started. I think that, we're going to see an increase as the good weather comes in, and overall, the scooter issue is big. They are separating, the state is not separating the bicycles from scooters, and I think we should do that. I think if we're able to, we should separate those categories, because electric bikes have 3 classifications under them to start with. So it gets very complicated and confusing.
So I guess a motion might be refer to legal and include the Durham Chapter 55 regulations.
Can I ask,
Yes, go ahead.
how do you feel like the Durham regulations are working? Like, are they, it helps, you said it helps with the rental fleets.
Well, we don't, so luckily, no rental.
them.
But I think in terms of community education about personally owned devices, it's working. I mean, the college campus is always going to have way more of these, like exponentially more than probably Portsmouth will have. So it is part of an education process. And of course, technically the university lands, facilities, trails are not part of the town, so that I won't get into all that. But I do think we are making steps at educating the owners of these devices about safe operations. Have a long way to go. I guess I would add to your motion that we ask, I don't know how the city would do this, but it is important that we follow the progress of these bills in the legislature, and maybe we should circle back on this issue when the legislative session has ended and the dust has settled. Might be wise. In terms of the bills that are in I agree with Mary Lou. My personal critique of the issue is that e-bikes and devices are being lumped together in the same pieces of legislation, and the issues are fundamentally different. Without getting into it, an e-bike is still a bicycle. The devices are different things. They're different animals, and people use them differently. And so, but I would just encourage in your motion that the city watch these pieces of legislation, and maybe we revisit after the session's over.
Sure. Yeah, so I tend towards what you're saying, Steve, and I feel like the way the motion is structured right now is overly vague, and will not give the legal department any direction relative to what the goal is. And I would suggest, monitoring what's going on at the state level, and then make an effort to refine exactly what it is we're asking to have done.
Okay.
Because,
Absolutely.
as you know, legal department's buried.
Yes.
Relative to the work they're doing, and to put one kind of not clearly defined step in front of them, I don't think it would be beneficial. I think we'd be better off, better refining what we're trying to accomplish, and in the context of what the state's doing, weigh in on the state's bills, so we get something we're more interested in having done.
Erica or Mary Lou?
Sorry to keep asking these questions about Durham, but I think it helps understand what issues might be. I noticed that there's an age requirement in the Durham bill that you cannot use a motorized device if you're under 16. Do you know what drove that?
It was the fear of the public fleets being available in the town and youth and the owners of those fleets maybe not having age restrictions, so we would have younger individuals having access to these public fleets. It's maybe a moot point now that we don't have the public fleets, but the concern still remains. These devices are relatively inexpensive, right? You can buy an e-scooter. It might not be very durable or safe, either electrically or operationally, but you can get one for under $500. They're disposable items, sadly. So we have that concern about it. And I think, too, the town and the university probably, once the state issues settle, will revisit the ordinance and the university's policies to tweak them and update them.
Mary Lou?
I just wondered if Peter was going to change the motion.
No, I was just saying.
Well, I don't think we have it on the floor yet because I just threw it out there. Without
Yeah,
a
I
second.
was just saying that I felt it was overly vague.
Yeah.
So I don't personally have a feeling on this at all.
Yep.
I have not seen the issue. I mean, I've seen Kid occasionally do it. I agree with the deputy chief that people driving down the wrong direction on Congress Street. I've seen the same thing,
Yeah.
or on those single wheel ones with fully geared up with armor and flying through crowds. I mean, that's an issue.
So my focus should not be just on sidewalks.
What I'm
saying
saying
is
is I just it's
much
overly
broader.
vague. I'm saying
Yeah.
I'm not sure at this point. I don't see the problem. You obviously have a goal that you would like to see addressed, and I can't speak to that. That's
Okay.
what I'm saying.
Well, I don't have a problem with it being a broader discussion than sidewalks. I brought it up because of what I was seeing on the sidewalks. I see that also. I see
I
kids
guess
going to schools.
If I may.
Yep.
I would then say we probably shouldn't refer it to legal then until we have a better, larger discussion internally to clarify exactly what we're trying to do.
Okay.
Because to just throw it out to legal and say we want to regulate scooters and all, electric vehicles, and
Yep.
it's
Too much.
They'll go, well, what do we want to do? And it'll force them to do a review of all the different types of ordinances out there. I think we need to understand what it is we're trying to do.
And we might already have one on sidewalks, and that then becomes an enforcement issue if we have a rule about it already.
We do for bicycles and skateboards.
Right, but we don't,
Yeah.
unless we go through the ordinances.
So
wouldn't
where
know
do
if
we
have-
start? Because that was my problem. Where do we start to discuss this as an overall?
Well, that's what we're doing now.
Yeah.
It's the very beginning.
Right.
Steve?
Would a more specific ordinance simply be ask the city legal department to determine if we have any existing ordinances and just leave it at that? And meanwhile, on our next agenda and subsequent until the legislature is complete, we track the state bills so that when that dust settles, we'll know where the state is, and our legal department will have said these city ordinances may or may not affect the issue in Portsmouth. Just a scan of does Portsmouth have anything right now that is relevant to these topics?
Topics being motorized vehicles.
Motorized e-devices and e-bikes versus regular bikes. And the answer might be neither. We have neither in Portsmouth. But that way we will at least be ready for when the dust settles in the legislature, and we could have an informed discussion of where the state is and where the city is. It might not be till May or June, but
Erica?
Mary Lou, could you state in one sentence, what is the concern? I've heard you say, I'm concerned about these devices, but what is the concern?
I'm concerned about the speed and the sort of, I could use the word disregard for pedestrians on the sidewalk when electric scooters are used. And it's just this is their space. And they're quiet. There's no warning that they're coming up behind you. And so that initially was my concern on sidewalks.
Okay.
It certainly is a concern if they're using the streets also, because they're going faster, but they're really not seen. I don't think that drivers are paying attention to scooters. They're having a hard time with bicycles, never mind scooters on the streets. So it's an overall picture of safety. It started with pedestrian safety, but it's obviously more than that.
So if I were to try and restate this, you're concerned that we don't have a way to regulate I'm going to use e-device in a big term, and we can worry about defining it another time. You're concerned with our potential inability to regulate the use of e-devices on the sidewalks and their overall disregard for traffic control devices. Does that encompass it? So, I guess, Peter, is that,
Fire Chief.
sorry. Is that specific enough, do you think? Could we ask legal to comment on how our existing ordinances do or do not give us the ability to regulate e-devices on sidewalks and regard traffic control? I don't know, or presumably, I mean,
I think
are
we
they
could ask,
subject to them?
we could just ask legal if we have any current ordinances regarding scooters on sidewalks. And when they come back with, yes, we do, or no, we don't, then we can have the bigger
there.
discussion. But if we already have an
Is that
ordinance.
focused enough, or is that
I mean, I tend to like to focus more on, ability to regulate those types of vehicles on sidewalks or
and streets, I guess, both.
and on streets both. I mean, the streets, it's a vehicle. I think those,
It's not a
It's not a vehicle.
Yet. The bill in
Yeah.
the House would make it a vehicle.
but I would argue it is a vehicle, and I would, but whatever. That's a legal.
So, Mr. Chair, if I could, just to try and salvage this, right? The legislative session crossover date for bills to go from the House to the Senate is the 11th of April. I think that gives us a firm timeline to understand the disposition of this bill, and we'll have an idea when it crosses over into the other chamber where it's going. In the interim, perhaps if we could get legal to review what ordinances we have on the books, that could lead to a discussion in the months of March and April, and by then we'll have an idea where the bill is headed and whether or not we even need an ordinance, because if state law is going to be changed, then we would be all set.
Good. Sure.
Second.
All right. Were you able to get that roughly? Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question about, we're talking about the state bills, seeing what happens with them as though they happen like in a vacuum and that we're just innocent bystanders. Do we have
Yeah, we're innocent bystanders here. We have no
okay.
jurisdiction whatsoever.
I mean, we can talk to our representatives though.
Yes.
Like,
Right, as residents,
Do we
we
as a city care about these?
I doubt this is on the legislative. I'm not part of the legislative subcommittee, but I doubt this is on their radar.
Do we
They're
want it
usually
to be?
worried about things like housing and budgetary bills.
Yeah, I mean, we can add it to Jane's list to, be concerned about, and we
Monitor.
give them a clear statement relative to what our concerns are. They could then advocate and get it to the legislative delegation.
But I don't see any mechanism where we could get the council up to speed and then have them weigh in before that April crossover date.
Right.
And I don't know that the council would want to spend time on this issue.
But it's easy to do individually.
Yeah, individually
Yep.
reach out.
Yep.
And I think there's even some online discussion about the two bills and
Right.
advocates for either side.
Right. Exactly.
And I would encourage, you all, if there's specifics that you want to propose, write them down and, we'll vet them, and then we can, once we have a clear recommendation, that can then go to council, which then can be referred to legal, type of thing, so.
Okay.
But that wouldn't happen in time for this legislative session. That would be like future.
Yeah.
I wouldn't get so held up on their legislative session. I mean, things like this take a while to kind of resolve.
Thank you.
All right.
So was that a motion or a second, or we're just?
In a second.
Yeah, I think you were the second.
Yep, and
Okay.
are we going to vote on that plan of action, or?
Yes. All right, so all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Sort of.
I think that's in Robert's Rules of Orders. All right, B, so skate park parking. Request to prohibit the parking on Greenland Road and Islington Street near the skate park per DPW. And the sample motion is move to prohibit parking on the north side of Greenland Road from Islington Street to the New Hampshire Park and Ride Lot, and on the west side of Islington Street from Greenland Road to Plains Avenue. And you can see up on the screen where it's highlighted. So if somebody wants to make that motion and second it, we can have a discussion.
So moved.
Second.
Do you want to speak to this, Director, or Eric?
Yeah, I can speak to that. I'll just share my screen here. I think it's working again. So with the recent opening of the skate park,
Jim is not cooperating today.
Unexpectedly.
So,
I don't think it's sharing anymore.
looks like we're still going, but. Try it again. Okay. So this is the skate park here in the area. This is Greenland Road, Islington over here to the right, Plainsfield, the park and ride lot over here. So with the recent opening of the skate park to the public, even though it's not fully finished, especially the parking area, there's been a shortage of parking, and we noticed some people actually parking out here on Greenland Road where the 2 lanes taper down to 1. So we wanted to nip that in the bud before it gets to be a common occurrence. And actually, parking is legally allowed on Greenland Road and Islington Street just simply because it's not prohibited. That's the way the ordinances work on parking. So we are designating, if it hasn't been already on the website, that this will be an overflow parking area here at the Plainsfield, as well as the park and ride lot. We'll push people to these lots before they even get to the site, so they'll know that's where to park, and they can take the sidewalks over to the skateboard park. So with that, we didn't want people to start thinking I can park out here on Islington or Greenland Road. We wanted to ban parking so that's not an issue before it becomes one. And so it's just a matter of getting this, being proactive and being able to put signs out there. We can't put any signs out until we have an ordinance to back it for no parking. And we didn't see this as affecting any residents' parking, because I don't think there's any parking out here at all. We do have Dodge Ave here, which is residential, and the hope is that skateboarders would not park in here, but if they do and that becomes an issue, we could address that at a later time. So that's the reasoning behind this proposal, is to try to head off any illegal or dangerous parking out there.
Erica?
That's, I guess, you're getting to my question, which is, why don't we want parking here?
On Route 33?
Yeah.
It's very narrow.
It's really narrow, and it's a merging area.
And it's very.
I would suggest you park there for a week, and then at the end of the week, you tell me why we don't want parking.
Really?
You'll probably find your car
driven
at
it?
National, sorry.
I think it raises a good problem, which is I think 33 is incredibly overbuilt, and we're working towards making it more of a walkable area. We want kids to be able to walk and bike to the skate park. Having that road have parking on it creates more of this is a slow speed road. This isn't supposed to be a race corridor. I think we need to make choices that are hard, that encourage slower speeds. And I think this environment, there are parts of it that have medians that I think there's no way we could have parking. Absolutely. I don't think we should have parking around the intersection. I think it's a tight area and you need to maintain sight lines. But I think there's places here where we have a lot of pavement. I don't know why we have two-way left turn lanes for individual homes. Like, this is incredibly overbuilt, and it's the gateway to our town, and it encourages fast speeds. So I hear what you're saying about it being a narrow road, but I think long-term, there should be on-street parking on this road.
Mary Lou?
I just wondered why, the other side of the street on Greenland, do people park there now, or just? the park, the skateboard park side,
Just the skateboard park side so far.
not the cemetery side.
No.
I mean, I think we would have to do both sides
Yeah.
because otherwise people are just going to park on the other side
Yeah.
and run across 33, which is probably worse.
Right.
Yep, that's certainly a consideration.
How many parking places will there be at the skateboard park?
I don't remember. Peter, do you remember this? It's going to be 2 rows of parking, and I would say 30, 30, yeah.
But the long term is that the area that has a laydown will have additional parking there for the rail trail access. So there's going to be over probably 90 spaces eventually. But in the near term, it's limited. I think it's closer to 40
Yeah.
than 30.
How many are there now?
The skate park is well utilized,
Yeah,
and the
that's
weather's
great.
not great. So I'm guessing in the spring it'll be much more utilized. So I guess to Erica's point, what we'd be looking at is like Route 1A and Rye, where people park to go to the beach. And is that does that slow down traffic? Is that better
Slows down
than
traffic.
prohibiting parking? And I don't know the answer to that. But it is kind of a crazy place to park, as I perceive it currently. Steve?
I support the simple motion, but curious why we wouldn't deal with the south side of the corridor right now as well. What's the rationale?
This was just a starting point. I didn't know if this would be perceived as too much, not enough. I just wanted to get this committee's input on it. It could, if we restrict it on one side, become an issue on the other side. And that's, if we decide we want to be proactive and prohibit it on both sides, that's certainly an option right now.
I would prefer if we were to prohibit it on both sides, because I don't want to encourage people to park on the opposite side and then cross 33. I think that's
Dangerous
You know,
crossing.
It looks like there's a 2 or 3 foot fog line along that curb line with a through lane and a left turn lane. There really isn't an opportunity for people to park on that other side. Unlike the outbound, there is space.
I bet people will though.
Whatever. If people want to do it both sides, that's fine. It's just additional signage. It's not a big deal.
I would, if I could, the riding this area quite a bit, that fog line acts as essentially a bike lane, and it's used significantly. I mean, if you go on the Strava and look at the heat map, that is a very, very popular bike route for getting out of town. And the thought of putting cars along that thing is like, it's a recipe for disaster, quite frankly. And I would strongly oppose allowing, a program to put parking along this area. I think this is a smart move, and being proactive, I strongly support and even if putting something on the south side is part of it, I would agree with that, because that just the same way, this is a very high traffic cycle route back into town also.
Yeah, I ride with Dave quite a bit and concur that roadway is not, if you put road parking on there, it would make it really dangerous. If, to Erica's point, if you would, to me, the road was designed the way it is. It's designed as really a highway. It's not designed as a local road. If the desire from the community and you get council approval and all those things is to rework that roadway, that's fine. There is the bicycle pedestrian master plan we're in the process of going to be interviewing soon, and that would be a good opportunity to speak to it. I would assume that this committee will be, briefed from that group. But without a major rework of that roadway, I would not be supportive of putting parking on there.
Steve and then Mary Lou.
Would you accept a friendly amendment to add the south side, and that we would have those conditions in place, north and south and Islington prohibition in place, and review X months after the parking lot is completed and the project is completed? But for now, these are no parking either side and on the Islington strip.
I would be fine with that.
That's what I was going to suggest.
Yeah, I like the idea of both sides because I think you're going to have a lot of younger drivers, and they're not necessarily going to take into account that maybe it's not an ideal spot to park because they've just driven from wherever and they really want to go skating.
Right.
Or to look for bicyclists before they open the door of their car.
But if we do direct them to the 2 parking lots, the overflow lots, and there's nowhere else to park, that'll kind of, because once one person parks, then everybody lines up behind that one person because
Yeah, so a lot of the clientele appear to be from out of town. So, we'll make sure the website's posted, with parking and start with the outer parking spots first. And then, the locals will know that they can park directly there, but, try to get the people who are Googling saying, how do you get there? Oh, here's where you park.
Yep.
Yeah. So you'll have signage inside the
There'll be
lot.
signage in the lot as well.
Yeah.
But the intent is to capture them
Get 'em
before they
elsewhere.
get there.
Yep. Good.
How many spaces are there now? Like, I know the lot's not done, but how many cars?
You can probably fit about 10, 15 spaces in there now. It still needs to have some more millings put down. It's mud,
Yeah.
a lot of mud in there right now.
It's cute.
Just an anecdote. I saw a kid skateboarding downtown a couple of months ago before all the snow. And I said, we have a skateboard park. He said, yeah, I was there at 7, was already packed. I came all the way down from Maine, and I had to come on the streets of Portsmouth.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yep, good thing.
It's being well utilized, which is great.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a motion. We have the friendly amendment to no parking on both sides. And then I think we'll hear probably from the skate community before we even need to do a report back at some point, once we put these signs up. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Old business? We have none. Informational, police monthly accident report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the month of December, we had 85 total crashes. 48 of those 85 were reportable. We had no instances of bicyclists and motor vehicle crashes. We had 2 instances of pedestrian and motor vehicle crashes, both of which were in parking lots.
Excuse me, you said both were in a parking lot?
In parking lots, yeah.
And then B, Market Square bus stop observations.
Okay. So we've been monitoring the bus stop in Market Square since we put the parking spaces into it. We have our own camera out there, which is on this pole here, been watching the spaces. Then we kudos to Tyler. He found this webcam. It's a live streaming webcam. Anybody can go on here on YouTube, and you can see live what's happening in these parking spaces. You can see a police cruiser's been here all morning. And you can watch and see the interaction between, parking, people using the parking spaces, buses coming in to pick up and drop off, people coming around the corner here on Market Street. So far, we have not seen any issues that stand out to us. Tyler's watched many hours of video out here, and he's, we're seeing typically the bus pulls up to where the shelter is, where this police car is right now, and does its pick up and drop off at that point. And other than that, it hasn't been an issue getting through. I did hear from Coast about any concerns they have. They did have a couple issues where people were waiting for the bus. The bus didn't stop long enough to wait for them to get on because according to Coast, the bus drivers feel a little pressure not to be stopped here in traffic, and because they're blocking traffic behind them. But it is 3 lanes wide here. I mean, traffic can get around a bus. It's just occasionally, depending on where they stop, drivers might get impatient behind them. So it appears to be working well so far. We'll keep monitoring it. And I don't know how long this webcam will be up, but this is certainly a way that anybody can come in here and look at it. And also you have the ability, if you scroll down here at the bottom, you can drag back over 12 hours. You can pick up on something if you see a flash there. You can see how buses are working or people parking. So it's a good way to keep on top of this and see how it's working at all times. But we'll continue monitoring it. Right now, obviously, dead of winter, it's not as active, but we'll keep an eye on it as it gets busier and activity picks up, see if it keeps working so well. So, bottom line is it's working well so far.
It's interesting how quickly those spaces got utilized. We put up the signs, and that morning people were parking there.
I
There was,
think this
no
car
delay.
here, this one has been here almost every day, most of the day. So they're taking advantage of stay and pay as well in this spot.
premium customer.
Yes.
Still don't like it. All right. Miscellaneous. Seeing no miscellaneous? No, I guess we'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everyone. See you next month.
Thank you.